Clifford, brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. You know, we connected, I want to say through LinkedIn or maybe a common connection on LinkedIn. And, you know, we had an amazing conversation. And through that conversation, I got to hear your journey, your story, things that you've accomplished, things that you're working on, things that you've overcome and experienced. You've had a lot of life that you've lived in a lot of cool ways and some interesting ways. And so, you know, I know that a good portion of the world has probably heard of who you are, but maybe not the details of your story. So if you could just kind of give the world a little bit of a heads up on Clifford Starks and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an ex-professional fighter, as you said, and the journey never stops. You know, you're constantly learning about yourself. You're constantly growing. I'm 38 now, and I have a 3-year-old son. And that's kind of the reason I stopped fighting. You know, I actually stopped fighting when it was probably the worst possible time. And that's when you're in the cage. So I'm in the cage and I'm thinking, man, I really don't want to get hurt.
Damn.
And that's the last thing you should be thinking of when you're in a professional fighting cage. But luckily I didn't get hurt, and I took a step away from the game. You know, I took a step away from the game so that I could be the best dad that I could be. And I wouldn't have traded it for anything else. I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, man, being a dad the same age, we're both 38. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, so about the same ages. And, you know, there's times definitely not in a fighting cage. And, you know, I train martial arts, but not nearly at the level that you succeeded at. And, you know, I can't imagine even in like a sparring session if my mind was elsewhere, if we were going hard, because you have to be all in. You have to be in the moment, the big now, you know, you have to be in the flow state, so to speak. And if your mind's thinking about protecting yourself, you might shell up, you might not be ready for something, you might get caught, and that could lead to some serious issues. And I know that there's a lot of studies that have been going on between football and you know, pro sports like boxing and MMA, where they're finding a lot of people that are having these lifelong sustained, you know, debilitating, you know, diseases that are coming from things like CTE or TBI and basically repeated brain trauma. So was that something that you started to think about, was just kind of the longevity of your health so that you could be there for your kid?
Yeah, I actually thought about that before then too. And so I did a lot of research before I even got into the MMA world, because I wanted to see like how long my shelf life was going to be.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just get into things, they're passionate about things, and they just jump in. And the truth is, my dad told me this when I was 6, thank God. So it's been something I've really been working through my entire life. And that's take responsibility. And taking responsibility is deal with the consequences of your actions, whether those be good consequences or bad consequences. Yeah. So before I ever got into a cage, I really, really did my research. Of course, you can't predict everything, but there's like a 9-year window where you can be pretty kind of at your highest level, almost no matter what age you start. And again, that depends. You can't be 50 and go to 59,
right?
But usually around between 30 and 20 years old, you have a 9-year window before you start declining.
Yep.
And so I wanted to take a shot at it and see how I would do.
Talk a little bit about how you got into it. Like what drew you in? Were you in like a friend or a family member watching it on TV? And like, talk about your journey from starting to like where you ended up your last fight.
You know, it's funny. So I was watching some of my boys from ASU. They were fighting and they were crushing it. You know, I used to train with Ryan Bader, CB Dalloway, Cain Velasquez, and they were doing really, really well in the game. And wrestlers tend to do very, very well in the game because honestly, wrestlers are insane, especially at the Division I level. The things
work
that
ethic.
They take. Yeah. There was one time, true story. So I'm running up stadiums, right?
Yep.
And this is after running like for 12 miles. Our coach damn near killed us. And I'm on the top of the stadium and I'm not even sweating anymore. There's like this dry, salty sand coming off of my arms. And I'm on the top and I'm thinking, man, I could just jump and just end this right now. Like,
you really crossed your mind, huh?
Yeah, I was like, and I'm contemplating it in my head. And that's where our minds kind of go. And so when you can take your mind to that place, because you have to take your mind to that place with
Yep.
life just throws you so much crap that you have to train your mind and you have to callous your mind consistently so you can be ready for anything. So I wouldn't have taken that moment back for anything. I wanted that moment because it helped me be the strongest me that I could be and deal with anything else that got in my way.
So you were able to reach different plateaus of mindset and different levels of mental toughness is really what it is. I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, it's sink or swim, it's fight or flight, it's survive or die, right? And you decided to take that as a learning lesson. And I love what you said about callous your mind. That's something that has come up for me a lot in the last kind of 12 to 18 months by listening to David Goggins and his book, Can't Hurt Me. And he talks about how to develop a stronger mentality, and it's all about callousing your mind. It's all about doing the stuff you don't want to do, the hard stuff, especially when that little voice inside tells you not to do it. That's the time you need to do it because that's the mental toughness being forged. So you saw your buddies from ASU, and I don't know if you know this name, Kyle Kingsbury. Have you heard of him before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kyle, I've been following him for a while. I met him back in December of 2019 on a retreat, a spirituality retreat, in his group Fit for Service. And I believe he went to ASU for a while, and I know he was a big MMA guy. So maybe you guys crossed paths. But going back to those ASU days and seeing these fighters and these people, your friends essentially, do really well, that's what attracted you to the MMA game. What was your first foray in the MMA game? Did you start off at a gym with some of those guys and kind of ramp up pretty quickly and then get to like through amateur and pro? And like, what did that transition look like for you?
Well, I was at a place called LA Boxing, which is ironic because it was in California, or it was in Arizona. It wasn't in California. But I'm like, okay, well, let me check this place out. And, they did the best they could with what they had.
Sure.
It wasn't necessarily the spot to take me to the level I wanted to go to. And I wanted to know if there was even a level I could go to. Because the truth of the matter is, if you don't have a chin, you're not going to be good in the sport.
Yep.
Just not going to happen. And so when I realized I had the skills, then I had to upgrade, and I ended up going to Arizona Combat Sports. And that was where Bader and CB originally were training out of. So I trained with them for a little bit. And then they ended up starting their own gym called Power. And I would go back and forth between ACS and Power, but ACS was my home. I was very loyal to Trevor Lawley. I loved his coaching style, and I loved how loyal he was to me. He took a chance on me, and so I took a chance on him.
Very nice. Very nice. And so what was your trajectory like when you got into the fight game? Did you, because you had this amazing base of wrestling and this amazing work ethic, did you take to it pretty quickly and like start to see success right away? What was the transition like going from first starting all the way? Yeah.
It's funny because people would look at it from the inside out or outside in and say he picked it up very quickly. To me, I don't feel like I pick up things necessarily quickly. I feel like I do have that unfathomable work ethic where I will continue to do the things that I need to do. Like, I think people miss that piece. Being a natural fighter is someone who can go in there and look okay on day one. That's not how I looked at all. I looked terrible. And I kept thinking about it. It kept running in my head about, okay, well, how can I get better at this? Where did I mess up? Oh, I messed up here. Let me try this. Let me try this over here. And I would play with it at home. So people would look at it and be like, man, he's getting really good really fast. But it's all the work that I'm putting in.
Yep.
Like, that's why I'm getting really good really fast. And that it's always been that way. Even when I was wrestling D1, I got my ass kicked for like 3 months. I was getting tossed around the gym like a kid. And every time I'd go home and I'd be like, it's not going to stay this way. And I would just keep repeating that. I'm going to get better. I'm going to keep getting better. I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to keep doing the things that I need to do. I was gifted with natural strength. So I'm naturally strong, but to pick up the techniques, I really have to think about them. I really have to digest it in my head, put it together, because it is a game of inches. And I have seen people who just get it, like they can look at something and they'll just get it.
Look, see,
And then
do,
there's
like
people
John
who,
Bones. They call it Johnny
yeah,
Bones. Look, yeah, the look,
yeah,
see, do method. He can look, see, and do. Yeah.
He can pick stuff up on the spot, like as he's in the middle of the fight, he can pick things up.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So,
Yeah.
so you talk about this, like this kind of, you said an insane mentality before, but this work ethic. And what was it you think that was driving you when you would go back home? And was it just getting your butt kicked for 3 months and you didn't like losing kind of thing? Like, what was it that drove you to keep coming back, keep showing up, and keep getting better?
You know, it's crazy. So my parents handed me some of these values early on, and that's what kind of worked for me. You know, even as I've gone through my coaching process, a lot of people, when we're looking at health, wealth, and relationships, a lot of times it's our environment more so than we realize. And so sometimes we don't know, we're just doing. We don't know what we're doing, we're just actively doing. And there were some scenarios in my life that where I really held on to those moments and I said, no, this is who I am. This is who I am right now. There was a time, this was in second grade, and my mom was having me read these. It was an English book, but there were a lot of Spanish words in this English book. And she would not stop. She every night just going over this book with me. And I'm like, Mom, Jesus Christ, like this sucked. And I didn't like it. I'm a kid. You know, I'm a kid. And so we get into the class and I'm crushing it though. When it's time to read the book, I'm reading the hell out of this book. And the teacher would start calling on me when kids would mess up words because I knew the words better than the teacher knew the words.
Yep.
And that's when it showed up for me. And so sometimes we don't know when our work's gonna show up and we get frustrated and we don't like it. But when it shows up, it feels so damn good the day that it shows up. Well, that was a lesson that I took with me. So everything that I do, I know I'm working towards something. We were even talking about like, no one likes getting their ass kicked. That's never a fun thing.
Right.
But you know you have to put in 100%, and whether you win or lose, you have to put in 100% the next time too, because you're not going to get any better if you don't. If you're like, well, let me just kind of try this time. No, you're moving backwards then.
Yep.
And that's what you're doing in life. Either you're moving backwards or you're moving forwards. Make a choice.
So they ingrained this, your mother and your father, you had good parenting. You had people behind you that were giving you life lessons that would bleed into all your endeavors as you went through life. And so what has that done for you, I guess, even in business now? Because, you know, there's some other stuff we'll talk about with MMA, but for business, you know, you're a transformational coach, you're an entrepreneur, you know, you're still an athlete, obviously, you're still training and doing things like this, and you're a dad, you're a family man, you got a lot of things going on that are pulling you in a bunch of different directions. What are some of the things you're able to apply in those disciplines of life to this day, even outside of MMA?
Ultimately, it's life is based on the principle and understanding how to work within the principle. So life is take responsibility, you know, do what you can, but you also need experience. No matter what endeavor you're getting into, you need a combination of the experience and the wisdom of someone who's been through those experiences. It would be like having a guide telling you, oh, you don't want to go down that path because that's going to happen. So it minimizes all the mistakes you're going to make, but you're still going to make your own mistakes. And you still are learning you as you go through your life.
Yep.
And I think sometimes people they're so wrapped up in, I don't even like calling it perfection, but they want to make like absolutely no mistakes at all. And that's it's just not possible. It's not going to happen. But you can have a great game plan and you can have a great strategy and you can act on it and then fall and then act on it again and adjust. You know, there's a book called Ready, Fire, Aim, and it talks about, you know, you just got to go take action with the plan that you have and then adjust from there.
So talk about ready, fire, aim, almost in a sense of, run before you can walk kind of thing, like get in there, adjust. Talk about a time you were up against it, especially with your fighting days. Could be amateur, pro fighting, whatever. Your hardest task that you're able to overcome that seemed insurmountable, and like what that was like, the feelings, the context, who was it against? Like, just paint that picture for us.
Well, so two of my hardest fights, my second fight was very, very hard because I didn't quite know how to check a kick yet.
Oh, no.
I was with a Muay Thai guy, and he's brutal. Like, my leg's still not, you can feel like a weird knot in it to this day.
Yep.
He kicked it so many damn times. What was so cool about that moment, you get to deal with your brain and going through, like, what are you doing? Like, he's kicking your leg, just fall over. Like, shut up and sit down, brain. I got this. And I ended up winning the fight. So I ended up winning the fight. And Trevor just, like, dropped amazed by the fact that I was taking those kicks. But I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be walking for a couple of weeks.
Were you just not checking him at all? Like, you were just planting your foot? Like, you just...
I didn't know how. So when I went from LA boxing, right, to ACS,
yeah,
my fight was probably like 2 weeks from going to ACS.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that was my fault. Because they probably would have waited for me to have a fight.
Yep.
But I'm like, nah, I'm going to do this now.
Ready, fire, aim.
Yeah. I'm about, like, taking action, figuring it out later. Which was good for me in the long run because I learned how to check every single kick that could be thrown at me. You'll watch all my fights. I don't get kicked. And that's because I'm like, all right, that's never happened.
Learned your lesson.
Yep. Lesson learned.
Damn, man.
But yeah, that was one of my harder fights. And there was another fight where I fought Yoel Romero. And this guy's a beast. Right.
He's insane. He's on all the Mexican supplements. He's
yeah. I'm just like, well, I'm standing up on the way. It's like, what the heck? Like, this is some. But it was an honor and a privilege to fight him, and I felt good in the fight. I felt great in that fight, and he ended up catching me with a flying knee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened was I was used to all of his timing and his speed. And this was my fault. Like, I didn't project that he could throw it from that far away.
Yeah.
And he just leapt into the air. I remember telling Trevor, like, man, what did he catch me with? He was like, a flying knee. And I'm like, he got that high up? Because it wasn't like I ducked into the knee.
Right. He didn't fake you out with a feint. You didn't duck low. Yeah.
And so I'm watching it on the big screen. And I really wanted that fight back. I wanted to fight him again, like, because it was a fun fight to begin with. Like, I respect his athleticism. I respect his speed. I respect his game. But I love those fights. And the other piece of it was I got to see what happens when I fall down. Because that was the first fight I actually got knocked out.
Yeah.
That's what life's going to do. It's going to knock us out, whether physically, mentally, or emotionally. It's going to do that. And the question is, what are you going to do? And I got back up, and my ear hurt for months after.
No way.
And I kept moving forward anyway. Yeah, I kept moving forward anyway. I wanted to stop fighting and do something else.
Yep.
Because I wanted to go after that strap. Like, that's where I was at. I'm like, I'm going after that UFC strap. Trevor told me not to quit, and his brother told me not to quit because there's so much talent there left in you. And plus, he's probably going to be fighting for the title one day, which is funny because he has fought for the title several times.
Right.
I said, Trevor, I want to be one of the best. If I'm not one of the best, I'm not playing this game. And Trevor's like, you're one of the best. You are one of the best. And you showed it in there. And now you get the choice on what you're going to do.
Yep.
But when he said that, I'm like, all right, let's see what I can do. Let's see if I still got this.
What was the actual because that's a huge testament to the human spirit, right? And your coaches doing the right thing in a sense of having your back and believing in you and wanting to see you not give up on yourself. You need that a lot of times. That's why we have coaches. and you're a coach,
100%.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of times people want to give up on themselves before, and a lot of times it's right before they reach that thing that they think they can't, or it's right before like they have that realization that they can do this. And that's why coaches exist, is to kind of show them, that they're right there and not to give up. And a good coach will sometimes say you need to pivot and try something else, but it sounded like they had your best interest at heart. But kind of just, I'm a MMA fan, and I've practiced martial arts for years and trained martial arts for years. And so I'm into the dynamics of the actual, like the little nuances of the fight. Like what were some of the things that you were realizing while you were fighting with, because for people who don't know, Yoel Romero is a freak, right? Like he's someone who's, was it a gold or silver medalist in wrestling?
Yeah, he's won silver a couple times.
Yeah.
He beat Kel Sanderson.
Yeah.
And Kel Sanderson's a stud.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So like, what was his strength like and his speed like? I know you said you were prepared for it, but just to give us some context, like compared to, someone else who's a pro in the UFC at that time, was it just formidable, or was it not as crazy as things are made out to be? Like, what was it like actually going up against him?
So I felt good in there.
Yeah.
I felt great in there, but it does feel like you're being attacked by two pit bulls. Like, I mean, he has freakish strength. He does have freakish strength and freakish speed. He's very explosive. So if you could picture in your mind that you're being attacked by two pit bulls, then yeah, that's kind of
gives you some context. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And for some people that don't know the UFC game and the MMA game, he's used that flying knee to some great, outcomes. He did it against Chris Weidman a couple years back. He caught him with the flying knee and completely ended the fight. I mean, there's something that he's mastered. And for you to feel like you went in there, and that was like the one thing, obviously, that kind of came out of the blue, but like to hang in there with him and to feel like you were doing well, I mean, that puts you in that world-class status. And so for you to come back out of that fight, even though you were disappointed, and even though because you wanted to win, you still must have felt pretty good at some level, knowing that you were able to compete. And so what time in your career was that Yoel Romero fight? Were there a few more fights after that? Like, what do the next few fights look like for you?
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, no one really got to see as much because the UFC is so prevalent.
Yeah.
But I had a pretty good career after that. I ended up fighting in the WSOF, and I went on a major winning streak.
Very nice.
And I was one more fight away from getting back into the UFC. And what's tough about the UFC is it's already hard to get into the UFC. It's even harder to get back into the UFC.
Right.
So I wanted to try and see, and I was one fight away from it. I swung for the fences. No excuses. I was injured for the fight with David Branch. Like, I messed my back up pretty good.
Another amazing martial artist. Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm fighting for the title at the WSOF against David Branch. And my back was a mess all camp. So I couldn't wrestle. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there like, man, I hope he doesn't wrestle me. And he was talking about showing me his hand. He's like, I'm going to give Clifford Starks a boxing lesson. I would have loved that. Yeah, I would have loved, like, please stick with that game plan. But I don't think he's going to stick with that game plan.
Yep.
Not when he feels my hands, because my hands are I don't think people respect them the same when they're watching. Like, if they're watching the fight, they're like, oh, his hands are okay. They're nothing special. You can't feel how my hands are until you feel me in the fight. That's
until
just
you get
the way
punched in the face. Yeah.
And that's the way it's kind of always been. Is it's just I'm setting people up, and they don't even know that it's happening, and you can't see it on the camera and be like, oh, there's a setup there, there's a setup there. You can't see the inches. It's kind of like, and I'm not even comparing myself to Mayweather's hands because he's a brilliant masterpiece. But you'll watch it and you'll be like, oh, well, Mayweather's just running. Like, no, he's a master in there. He is destroying people in there. And
he's pulling people using distance, like getting them to chase him, pushing people. There's all sorts of play in there for sure.
Exactly. And no one can see it unless they're in it. And they can't even see it because they've never even been in a boxing match before.
Right.
And so I knew that David Branch wouldn't know what was going to hit him until fight time. But then he ended up wrestling me anyway.
The classic, everybody, like, especially like, there's a big MMA community here in Atlanta, Georgia. And there's definitely like a lot of amateur and pro people. And you'll see people that say, oh, he's the best wrestler. And then he goes in there and just uses his hands and kicks the whole time. It's like a setup, right? It's like, yeah, like I'm going to wrestle you. And they do nothing about wrestling, or I'm a striker and all I do is wrestle you like David Branch did. So you fought for the championship at the World Series of Fighting. Yeah. And, what happens after this? What's the next step for you after that?
So I ended up losing that fight. I'm like, damn, I didn't get back in the UFC. So I ended up fighting for a Russian organization.
Which one?
And I can't even remember the name of it.
No worries.
But it's a pretty decent sized organization. Like, they're comparing themselves to the UFC.
Wow.
They say they're saying their guys can beat the guys in the UFC.
Okay.
No, they can't. Like, I'll tell you, no disrespect, but I fought their guys, and no, they can't. The first fight didn't go to plan. It was, I didn't know that jet lag was really a thing.
It's a thing.
Crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really messed with me, because I was not fighting well in that fight at all. Like, and I was beating him in the first round. So I'm beating the guy in the first round, but I felt like crap. And this is what's so funny, because Trevor is too damn honest for his own good. So I go back to the corner, and Trevor's like, you look tired. And they're like, that's not what you tell your fighter.
Oh.
I was like, yeah, you got there. Like, damn it, Trevor. Yep. So I'm here, and he drains my battery even more, because he's telling me how tired I am when I'm already tired.
Yep.
And it's just like, man, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the other thing. As you go through your sport, you get to learn about what works and what doesn't. Telling your fighter they're tired when they're tired probably isn't the best game plan. But
learning lesson for him too, for sure.
Yeah. So, and I respect the honesty, but that wasn't the time.
Bad timing. It was like the comedic timing wasn't there on the joke. You know, it was
if you're helping one of your friends on the bench press and you're like, oh, bro, this is really heavy. I don't think you're going to get this one.
Yeah. And then the person walks away. Yeah. Not a good time.
So I ended up losing that one. And then the other fight was the one where I was just like, I just wasn't even in the fight.
That's when you told us in the beginning of the show was your episode was like you were thinking about not being injured.
Not being injured, yeah.
Okay. And that's when you just knew at that point. And what was your age at that last fight?
I was 36.
36. Just a couple of years ago. So 36. Mm-hmm. So you're still in that season where it's kind of like decision time. Do I continue to keep chasing this dream, or do I pivot? And so let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people that are listening do make a transition and have a pivot in their life, and they go from one thing to another. A lot of people that are listening maybe have a dream to be an entrepreneur, and they're working a 9-to-5, so they have a side hustle that starts to pick up momentum, or they leave altogether and they burn the boats and they start a business kind of thing. What did that transition from fighting? Because, as we talked about off air, there was some people that I mentioned that like it can have devastating effects. Like we talked about being an astronaut, like going to the moon and coming back. A lot of astronauts have a hard time reintegrating into regular life because they've went to the moon. Like, what else can they do? And so like you see a lot of negative things happen, from alcoholism to drug abuse to depression. But for you, when you left fighting and you made that decision, what did that transition look like for you before you went into being a full-blown entrepreneur?
So I was looking at entrepreneurship as this can be a much easier thing than the fighting arena. And I wasn't respecting it the way that I needed to respect it, because I knew I'm like, oh, it's just a plug and chug. Like, if I plug and chug, and plus this was the one time in my life where I was a little bit confused, and it's not to say like I'm a very live in the present type person.
Yep.
But what got me confused were you had all these entrepreneur / so-called coaches and gurus. That's partially why I don't even like being called a coach, just because it's given a filthy name right now.
Yeah.
It's given an absolute filthy name, and it kind of sucks because there's some really bad ones out there, and they'll tell you like in 30 days you can do this, and in 60 days, and oh, no technical skills needed, none of this, none of that. And it's just like, they're kind of BSing you.
They're lying to
You
people.
know?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a lot more different. That would be like me telling someone like, hey, get a fighting career in 30 days or less. You can fight in the UFC. You don't even have to know how to throw a power punch. You don't need a chin. You don't no, that's a lie. You're
Takes
lying
years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're refining and putting together and making things happen, doesn't work. And I finally I tried, and I'm like, man, do I suck at this? Because everyone's telling me how easy it is. And I actually had to sit back and I go, Cliff, all right, let's be honest with yourself. If you were talking to you about becoming a high-level fighter, about losing weight, because I was a health coach. I started as a health coach.
Yep.
And no, it's not that simple.
Did that come from the health coaching, come from like your experience with like diet and training and like just your personal experience, and you were able to speak to it because you walked through it so many times with having to cut weight and having to bulk up?
I graduated at ASU in kinesiology.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
And so that was very health focused, and it actually had some psychology in there too.
Yep.
Just getting with the mind. And that's where I really, so when I call myself a coach and dealing with mindset and transformational and health, it ultimately comes from constantly learning and researching and actually coaching people through it.
Yep.
Like my results, that's the other thing too. When they're like, results are not typical. Well, then you're not a good coach. Like, you're not good at what you do, because results should be typical.
Yep.
You should have amazing results for most people. If you don't, then no, you're not good at what you do. You got one lucky person, and you use that as your framework for doing the things that you do. And that's where it's just like, now you're getting me started with like the entrepreneurial world, and they're talking about make millions of dollars and six figures. Results not typical.
Right.
It's like, okay, you're just lying to people now.
Yeah,
like, what it is.
It's a shitty little disclaimer that gets them out of hot water if people want to get mad at them for their stuff not working, right? And you know, there is some onus for people that are actually like the students or the your clients. They get to show up too, and they get to put in the work. So, you know, there's part of it where sometimes that doesn't happen. You can't control that, but at the end of the day, I think you're right where you're saying, you know, this is what I provide. This is what I can do. There should be a result from that. There should be, you know, some sort of quantifiable measure that you can hang your hat on and say, you know, most of my clients, all of my clients, when they follow this process, this will happen at some level. Now, what happens to them may be different because they may be looking for different things in life, whether it's health, wellness, it's, you know, business, it's making more money, if it's being a better human being. There's a lot of different things that play into that. But I think you're right. I think that the results would speak for themselves if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think that, in fact, no, I don't think I know this. The best coaches are going to know who is a fit for what they do and who isn't a fit.
Yep.
And they're going to be honest with those people and let them know that. Don't try and pigeonhole someone into your product or your service.
It does no one a benefit. You're wasting both people's time.
Wins that battle. And I think that's what the issue is.
Wasting money. It's bad business. There's so many people that just want you to buy their program and do their thing. They don't care about you. Honestly, they just want the money. And it's like, there's so much that, like you said, going on out there. But I actually look at it in my business because I'm a investment manager by trade. And I look at the people that give us a bad rap, like as a positive thing for me, because then I can go out and shine a bright light the right way. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I don't wish harm or ill on anyone, but like the ones that keep screwing it up out there makes my job easier in a sense.
That's true. That's very true.
So,
and I like that way of looking at it too, Jesse. Like we talk about just showing up and shining your light. And I love getting on coaching calls with people because all I want, all a coaching call is to see if you can move this person in the right direction.
Yep.
And if they end up working with you, great. But ultimately, you want to move them in the right direction. You're not trying to sell them on something. You're not trying to, oh, well, this is why you need this package. It's like, No, I want to get you moving in the right direction. I actually have one client that I started working with, and it's funny when it's the husband-wife thing sometimes, because you have to go deal with both sides.
That's right.
And her husband's like, you don't need a coach, you should go to a therapist. And so in my head, if you feel a therapist is what's going to work best for you, then go with the therapist. If that's what you feel you need, then do that. If you feel like what I'm offering you works for you, then you can work with me. Now, in my head, I don't think she needs to go to a therapist. I've seen mental illness, and that's not mental illness to me. But I'm not going to force my services on somebody either. And so she ended up going with me, which was great. And she's already crushing it, So
That's
I
awesome.
look at things like that.
So you mentioned going from your background and your experience with yourself from college and being kinesiology major to being, a professional fighter where diet and health and wellness is paramount. Is that one of the cornerstones of your transformational business now with your coaching? Do you get people to adhere to that, or is that not for every client? Like, walk us through what some of the things, some of the protocols that you put in place for your clients are.
Yeah. So it's really about finding your alignment mentally, physically, and spiritually. And when you find your alignment, then you're able to be as impactful as you were built to be. We're all built with special gifts, special uniquenesses. And what I see when I look at a person is I see their finished product. I see them on their end game.
Yep.
And my end game is I want millions of people at my funeral. That's what I ultimately want.
Legacy.
Yeah. And I want my son to be proud of his dad. I want to give to the world as much as I can give until my light stops burning. I want to burn as bright as I can until my light stops.
Like a candle, man. That's the term I've heard recently. Like burn bright the whole way through.
Yeah. Well, it feels good, man. Even we're sitting here having a conversation, getting to know each other, being interviewed, understanding, and just making each other's lives better from having it, and even your audience and my audience get to hear this. And our hope is that they take it in and they take the actions in their life that they're supposed to take in their life, live a just life, because you'll reap the rewards when you do.
Talk a little bit about, and before we get into that, I agree. I agree that, it's the interactions, like there's people that want to change the world and rightfully so for the better, but it's the micro interactions that gets to that macro. It's the leaving people better than you found them in each interaction. It's adding value. It's leaving it kind of in a bright spot, so to speak. And I mean, again, there's real life situations that happen out there, but people, if they can find the right people to align with, and the right people to connect with, coaches, friends, mentors, whatever it is, that's really kind of what one of the sweeter things in life is about, right? It's about connecting and growing with, helping people reach places. They help you reach places. And there's this mindset that I have. It's called the rule of thirds. And it's a third of your contacts needs to be ahead of where you are, so they can kind of help guide you and groom you to get to where you want to be. The next level of the thirds is in the middle. It's the people that you're walking through seasons of life with currently now that you can share and help and kind of, be with. And then the other third is the people that are coming up just below you that you can kind of pass that knowledge on to them so that they can level up too. And so when you're talking about people and they're leveling up, and you had a couple things that I liked. You had the 6 steps to greatness, and you have the vibrational level. Can you talk about both of those?
Yeah. So the 6 steps to greatness is essentially the principles that I go by. And the principles are you have to critically think through these principles, right? And so ultimately it's think big in life, be able to stretch yourself, because everyone's big is going to be a little bit different and it's going to be generalized. And so when you get really specific on what your big is and take action on your big, stretch yourself and feel that uncomfortableness. When we talked about going away from the fighting arena, what gets people in trouble is they get to that big, like I went to the moon.
Yeah.
And when they get back, it's like they feel like they've lost something. They haven't lost anything though. they feel like they've lost something because they can't move any further than that.
Yep.
But you can. And it's like, just figure out where you can and how you can. So think as big as you can. And then the second, have a plan of action, and be very specific with that plan, where it's specific or smart plan, specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, and time. Put it on a time scale, because if you don't put it on a time scale, then it's always going to be in the future.
Floating out in the future.
Yeah. And then the third is have passionate action. Passionately act in what you're doing. And what people miss, I feel, about passionate action, you have to put in the work, even in the things you don't want to put the work into. I think when people hear passionate action, they're like, just follow your passion. Do what you like. Like, no, you are going to do a lot of what you don't like.
That's right.
To get to the like.
Yeah.
You get to the like. You don't just do what you like. If I just did what I like, I wouldn't have been a good fighter. Trust me. Like, heel time. I'm not running heels today because, I don't really like those things.
I don't feel like it. Yeah.
And my hamstrings and my glutes. So I'm gonna step back. And we're sparring hard today. I'm not gonna do that. Like, I'm just waiting for fight time. Thank you though. Like, no, you have to do a lot of what you don't like, and you have to do it with passion, with enthusiasm. And then you get to what you like.
Yep.
And then the fourth is, and this is the third and the third and the third, have that faith. Like, you're going to get beat to fuck.
Yep.
You are. Like,
Yep.
It's going to be hard, where you're just like, am I really doing this? And when you see someone that's actually done it or obtained it, or even obtained something similar to what you're trying to do, because we want to be trailblazers too. We want to try different things. But if we had someone who tried something different that wasn't in the norm before and they did it, then your different thing just might work. And so just having that faith to know, like, all right, I'm going to keep digging. I'm going to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until I figure this thing out. And then the fifth, like I said, take responsibility. And it's just, when we take responsibility, taking responsibility doesn't mean yelling out to the world, I take responsibility. But it's just like, whatever happens, you can figure it out. Whatever you do, you can figure it out. Whatever mistake you made, you can make it better. You can figure that out. And it's take responsibility of the things that good happen and the things that bad happen. Because when you do that, then you can pivot.
Yep.
But if you don't, you're just a leaf in a stream. You're just going with the flow and letting the world take you where it takes you. And it's like, be proactive in life, not reactive. And so when you combine those 5 steps and you really get tight on those 5 steps, because again, there's these ups and downs and lefts and rights. There's so much stuff going on. Then the 6th step is greatness within. And that's where not only do you want to do right by you, but you want to do right by the society. You're so good at doing right by you, you realize that it's about doing right by others.
Yep.
I know we always talk about help other people, but people who need help themselves don't understand that. They can't understand that. How I help other people when I'm trying to help me? It's like, sometimes I've had clients like this. I don't want them helping anybody. They got to help them first.
Yep.
You're in a big hole right now, and you haven't climbed out of it yet. And we're getting so many voices that are saying so many things, and it's nice because it gives us something to think on and have talking points and have critical discussion on. But we're not one size fits all. It is impossible. That is why people need coaches.
Yep.
Good coaches. Because one thing might be great for one person, but it might be completely terrible for another person. Saying to one person, and that's where it was kind of funny with group training when I would train women in groups, because they all listen. And I have to remind them, like, no, you're all different. She's 300 pounds. You're 120 pounds. You guys aren't eating the same.
Right. Very different habits, most likely. Right. And so when you're using these 6 steps to greatness in your programming and you're educating your clients, are they linear, step 1 through 6, or can you see, step 3 come in before step 2? Like, are you sprinkling in everything at once? Like, how do you actually implement these 6 steps in their progress?
They're all sprinkled together.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yep.
They go with what they need at the moment. Because some people may be thinking big, they may be thinking big and they just don't have a plan. Some people might even have a plan, but they're not thinking big.
Yep.
Some people may be taking amazing action, but they're not thinking big or have a plan.
Yeah, like they don't have a direction with all that action. Like they're digging the hole to go wherever, but they don't have a plan on where they're going, kind of thing. You know what I mean? They're just putting all this massive action towards no. There's a book that I'm reading now. It's the 4 Disciplines of Execution, and the first thing is what's called a WIG, a wildly important goal. And all these corporations and all these executives and all these like people that want to aspire to be something, they'll make a laundry list, a to-do list of like 100 different things they have to do. You need to pick the 1 or 2 goals that are going to literally get you to where you want to be and like have a laser focus to get there. Because if you're trying to do this thing over here for 10 minutes, this thing over here for an hour, at the end of the day, you haven't really accomplished anything except for a lot of like tasks. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's really focusing on the end goal. Like you said, being a leaf in a river that floats to wherever it may be, or being intentional and like putting your laser focus on what it is that you want and then getting after it and putting all that effort into getting to that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece. So for you and for the next piece that I like, along with all the stuff that you're doing in your coaching and your mentoring and your leading, is you talk about vibration levels. You talk about where people, they show up in the world and how they put themselves into the ether, so to speak. Talk a little bit about the vibrational levels and what that looks like for you, because I think you came up with this on your own, right?
Yeah. So I look at it like a circular piece, and it's 1 through 10. So 1 and 10 are much closer to each other than the other numbers.
Okay.
And so the 1 and the 10 means when you're vibrating at a 10, you're empowered and you want to do right by people, and you're intentionally looking out and learning and growing and developing so that you can give to more people. But you can also downshift into that 1.
Yep.
And we've all been there where we feel like crap and we just don't like life so much. Like it's just like, man, I'm just mad at the world right now. And so a 10 has the responsibility to do their best to stay at their 10.
Yep.
Because they know all the psychological games that work with people. And if they go into that 1, that means they know all of those psychological games that can hurt people too.
Yep.
And it's important. I always say, shine as bright as you can. Don't be dark. Like that's what I stand by is don't do dark things. Do your best to shine as much as possible. And actively shine. Actively go into your 10. Yep. Instead of like your 9 or your 8, because some people are passively shining and they're just, people like them. They don't quite know why. They don't quite get why, but they know that they do. And the people that are liked, they don't quite know why they're liked so much. They just do.
Yep.
And it's like, it's so much better on both ends when not only are you shining and they're liking you, but you're intentional in it. You know why they're doing that. You know why they're doing the things that they're doing. So we look at the 1 through 10, and it's almost that, are you empowering people or are you manipulating people?
Yep. Are you adding value or detracting value from people? And so I know it could be all over the spectrum, and it could be even multiple things in the course of a day, from being a 10 or a 7. But where do you see most people are operating on a day-to-day basis? Is there like a normal, natural
I feel a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
And again, I can't 100% say that because I'm not with everyone.
For sure.
But from what I've seen in my experience, I experience a lot of 6 and 7s.
Okay.
That's usually why they come to see me, because I get them to that 9, to that 10.
So 6 and 7 would be life is okay, life is decent, but like they're still yearning or longing for something greater or having more purpose or more impact in their relationships in their life.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about like, I'm good. I'm a good person. And I'm like, well, good doesn't even get good results.
Yeah.
So why just be good? Be exceptional. Because when you're exceptional, you get the most amazing results life can ever give to you. Like, that's the beauty of it. But if you're just like, well, I do good in life, like, well, good enough doesn't work for anyone, even you. So it's like, so since you know it doesn't work for you, why would you say it would work for anybody else?
What are some things people can do, outside of obviously like connecting with you and hiring you? What are some like little hacks that people can do to get from like a 6 or 7 to like a 7 or 8? Just like an immediate little something in their day they can do.
I'd say the biggest thing, be as present and aware as possible, and look at your life and question, is this where I want to be? Like, really take a moment to be present and ask the question, is this where I want to be? Because we're so gifted, we're so powerful, that I think we forget that we are sometimes.
Yep.
Because we set into a level of comfortability. And comfortable, we don't want to be comfortable. Like, truly we don't. Because either we're living or we're dying. And we have to move towards something. We always have to move towards something. Like, ultimately, when you speak to some of the greats, and sometimes they feel like once they've obtained that one thing they've obtained, they haven't looked past that thing. And so they're like, man, my life is done. And you can't, what's so crazy about it is you can only warn them about their mind, but you can't take what they're going to do and what decision they're going to make away from them in a weird sort of a way.
Yep.
Because if they feel like they're done with life, they feel like they're done with life. And it's hard to just tell a person, you're not done yet. Like, how do you tell the champion of the world that they're not done yet? You don't know their world.
Yep.
So you could just sit there and listen in. And that's the other thing on coaching. Like, I didn't realize how powerful this was, but taking a moment to listen to someone is very powerful on both ends.
2 ears, 1 mouth. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It just lets them unleash all of that stuff. And we all have problems. We all have issues. We all have situations. And knowing that and being able to present and take it all out and just blurt it out gives us the chance to be like, well, maybe there's an opportunity here somewhere. And so that would be like the biggest hack I could give anyone is look for an opportunity somewhere, because our brains are tricky. And if it looks for problems, it's going to see problems everywhere. But if it looks for solutions, it's going to see solutions everywhere.
Yep.
And when you do find a solution, start acting towards that solution.
So I'm someone, let's say, I'm a potential prospect or client or someone that I can work with you and get a lot of value out of what you do for people. What are some of the things that I may be thinking to myself? If there's people listening to this or watching this right now that say, XYZ, when's a good time for them to reach out and connect with you? What are they thinking? What are they saying them to themselves? Like, where are they at in their mindset would be like a good pivot point to get the coaching they need to transform.
So all of my people are fighters by nature, and a fighter is someone who they believe there's more out there. They believe they can upgrade. They just don't have the how yet, or they don't have the right story to make them do the things that they need to do. Because sometimes we just need to hear the right story.
Yep.
And whether it be our fears, our doubts, our anxieties that are stopping us, or the words we're telling ourselves, the words that we're making bigger than life to be like a deer in headlights. But there's that fighter in there somewhere. You just don't know how to unleash it. That's what I'm about. I'm about unleashing that fighter so that you can upgrade and you can set the bar higher every time.
I love it, man. It's, you've got a ton of value. I think there's a lot of take homes for people that are listening to this from, your story, your journey, how you've transformed in your own life, how you're helping your clients transform in their lives and leaving the world a little bit of a better place with each of those micro interactions. So if people want to find out more about Clifford Starks, if they want to get in touch with you, find out more about your business, how do they do that?
They can email me at info@cliffordstarks.com. You can also Facebook Messenger me at Clifford Starks. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on YouTube too. I'm busy.
Got a lot going on. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Keep spreading the message. Keep empowering the world, leaving the world a little bit of a better place. He's the amazing and powerful Clifford Starks. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on the newest episode of the Jesse T Show.